right, let's see if I can get it going. All right. Interesting times these days. I've been thinking a lot about the businesses I'm part of. I'm a small business owner. Thinking short and long-term business decisions. I have clients looking for me for answers regarding, should I list my house now? Should I allow showings? I have buyers wanting to continue to look at homes. Should they? My name is Chris Smith. I'm a broker owner in Bloomington, Indiana. And I also build houses and have other small businesses. And I just started thinking long and hard about what I was going to do in terms of long and short-term business planning. And this discussion will not give absolute answers, but hopefully some factual insight for all of us to make better short and long-term decisions and to really help me better understand the current crisis. And to do that, I've invited my brother, Dr. Robert McCollum Smith, as he'll be known as Rob from here on out. He's the chair of the Department of Neurosciences and the research director of the Neuroscience Institute in the College of Medicine and Life Sciences at the University of Toledo. Hi, Rob, and welcome to the discussion.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, so let's start with virus numbers and why the concern for flattening the curve. Kind of talk to us about why we're in, I'll say, isolation right now and what we're supposed to be doing.
So the flattening the curve idea is that with community spread, which is people who aren't known to be exposed to the virus, don't realize they have it or are incubating it, are out in the community infecting other people. And so by isolating people and having social distancing and other things, then the rate at which the infection spread is lowered, and then the number of people who get sick at the same time is decreased. And then if you just follow the math, then you'll have fewer people who get severely ill at the same time, and you won't overwhelm the capacity of hospitals and intensive care units to care for the most sick who get infected with this virus.
Well, let's go into that a little bit. I know New York's is the concern right now, and I looked it up. New York State has a population of just shy of 20 million. They have 15 million adults and 3 million seniors. So knowing that, what are kind of the sickness ratios? How many people end up, how many people, what's the percentage of people that find this to be a problem, the disease effects, the virus effects?
Well, the population in general, about 80% of the population overall, when they get infected with coronavirus, has a relatively mild to moderate course. Some of those folks may not even realize that they're sick. Some of them may have typical cold symptoms.
Right.
And so about 8 in 10 folks don't really have an impactful illness. About 20% notice they're sick, can become very ill, and that's the group that ends up in the hospital, ends up in the intensive care unit. When you break it down by age and pre-existing condition, things are more concerning. If you have a disease or medications that suppress the immune system, if you have pulmonary or heart disease, hypertension, things like that, in your medical past or in your present, present set of, illnesses in a person, then you're at higher risk for the virus causing a worse course for your body. And particularly folks over the age of 60, over the age of 70, seem to be particularly vulnerable to this virus. So the rates of intubation, the rates of hospitalization are much higher in those who are at risk.
Got you. And the leveling the curve, I mean, if you have 3 million seniors and 2% of them get sick, that's a big number. And
that's a big number.
And we don't have that many respirators or beds, for that matter, in the hospital.
No, and even if you've seen some of the things out of New York today and yesterday, where they're setting up a temporary hospital with 1,000 beds, they could fill that easily and be turning people away. I saw another anecdotal story where one hospital group is 3D printing special valves that allow you to put 2 patients on the same ventilator.
I heard about that.
That's a very creative solution.
Mm-hmm.
I had a phone call today with a dental student, not a dental student, a dentist, a research dentist here at the University of Toledo. And of course, all of dentistry is shut down. There's no teeth cleanings. There's no elective dental procedures. If you have a bad infection, then they'll see you in an emergency. And so she's designed, working with engineers and 3D print in the 3D print shop here, some new tools to help dentists be able to do their job and not get infected, especially during the shortage of personal protection equipment. So she's moving forward very quickly and has a phone call on Monday with the National Institute of Health person that is in charge of funding for the coronavirus, and they're going to see what they can do to let her get some funding and start producing these specialized masks for dentists. So that's just
cool.
Of some of the innovation that's going on.
Yeah. So to bring this locally for us in Monroe County, we have a population of 150,000 in our county. 2% of 150,000 is 3,000. Did I do that right? I think I did.
Yeah, I'll validate that.
Yeah, 3,000 people. I talked to a doctor recently, and he said that at our hospitals we have 30 respirators, and our surgery centers we have 30 more. That's 60. That's well short. So that just goes to show you the flattening of the curve and how important it is. And Betsy just found out one of the nurse techs she knows is actually on a ventilator in the hospital right now. Was diagnosed. They're actually waiting on the results, but they're pretty sure that she has the coronavirus. So it's gotten here. Talk to me about the connection to MERS and SARS. Did I say those right? And I really and the goal of that discussion is to talk about how this virus evolves, where it starts, and kind of help me with this long-term thought of, well, it's just going to come back next winter. So what are we going to do?
Yeah, so the coronavirus is from it's from a family of viruses called coronaviruses because of the outer coat has sort of long pointy things on it. And when you look at a ultra-structural picture, with electron microscopy or whatever, it looks like the corona around the sun, the circular viral particles. The virus has several related sort of, types, and MERS, which I believe is Middle Eastern Respiratory Virus, and SARS, which was a couple of years ago, a virus that was found in China, are both coronaviruses. They are less infectious, meaning that it's a little harder to catch SARS or MERS from a person that has it. Just being in the room with a person with one of those, unless they were really expectorating a lot of sort of virus-filled droplets or something like that, it would be really hard. And those viruses didn't seem to survive as long outside of the body, for example. So the COVID-19 virus is very similar, and I don't have the numbers memorized. What I read last week for a paper that we're writing, I seem to recall that the viral DNA, the genome of the virus between SARS and COVID-19 is about 96%. I think MERS is in the high 70s in terms of sequence homology. Now, what does that mean? That's an interesting question, right? What does that mean? Well, chimpanzees and humans only differ in about 1% of their genome. So when you think about how it doesn't take a whole lot to change in the genome to go from a chimpanzee to a human. So even a 4% difference in the viral genome could be very, very different. And that's, probably what's happened here is that this particular version of the virus has evolved. It's more infectious. It's spread to more people. And that's sort of how evolution works, right? The virus is winning the game by not killing 80% of the people that are infected, or really 99% of the people that are infected, and then the viral cycle can perpetuate itself. So, the issue then comes back to testing. And you haven't mentioned testing yet, but there's a lot of, news reports about testing and why don't we have a test? And it's a real problem. If you don't know who has the virus and you don't know who's had the virus, it's really hard to tell people what they can do and can't do. And it's really frustrating. So one of my kids was in Boston and got sick, and she had cold and flu symptoms. And she went to the, university sort of healthcare place. And there were 2 students on her campus that had already tested positive, not necessarily by the campus health office, but at some point. And they tested her for flu, it was negative. They tested her for strep throat, that was negative. And they had no test kit for COVID-19. So her sister visits her the same week on her spring break trip. She gets sick, comes home on Amtrak, probably infects hundreds of people. We don't know if she had coronavirus or not because there's no tests. She comes home and she's around her brother and her other brother and her mom and me. We've all been exposed to whatever she had. It could be a common cold. It could have been influenza with a negative, a negative test, a false negative test, or it could be COVID-19. We have no idea. So when I picked up, in this case, Dagny from her college and spent 15 hours in the car with her, I spent the next 2 weeks in isolation. Basically not around anybody, just in case I'd been exposed. And so that's the problem, is how do we get people to do that when they don't even know? It's psychologically really difficult. The unknown is something that's really hard for people to deal with. It's really easy to be in denial. Oh, it'll never get me, or I don't have it. But it's kind of like, if you know somebody who's tested positive, you're all of a sudden taking everything really seriously. Without the test, we can't even take that step.
Yeah. So when all this started, what really started this discussion is I was trying to decide to start new homes. We've got some under contract, and should I start them? They would close in October. Will this fall, when it gets cold again, this fall, winter, will this be an issue? Why or why not? What are your thoughts on that? Will it mutate and come back quickly? Is it going to have a second wave where people that were sick before are going to get sick again? What is the thoughts on how this virus is going to cycle and what the healthcare community is going to do?
Yeah, I think that what you're going to see over the next few months is widespread testing, rapid testing, slow testing, rapid testing. You're going to see tests for people to see if they have immunity to the virus. So there's a difference between testing for the presence of the virus and testing to see if you've had an immune reaction and fought the virus off. And so the test for the virus is very simple. It's a polymerase chain reaction. And it allows you to detect unique viral DNA that's not found in the human body, that's unique to the virus. And I was talking with a colleague about this today. The PCR, the polymerase chain reactions, we have high school kids doing that in the lab. This is not a difficult test to design, to create. And, the fact that the country and the world with the strongest medical research community has struggled to come up early with a reliable and fast and efficient test is really, really a terrible outcome. But we have lots of tests now. Some are, officially through the CDC. Some are through regional medical centers and other hospitals, and a few companies have developed them. But we really need both tests. If you have both tests and you have enough sort of community manpower, you can start tracking people and making sure that they've had the virus. If they've had it, have they had an immune response, and are they now sort of resistant to catching it? So that would be really important, because theoretically, let's just use the example of an NBA basketball team. If you had a basketball team full of players that have all had the virus, they could play another team of players that have all had the virus. Game on. But if there's even one player on that team who hasn't had it, you wouldn't want him on the court, Yeah. So the other thing that's interesting is we'll get a lot better at picking up who's having symptoms. So the most likely group of symptoms at onset is crashing fatigue, body aches, fever, chills. That's the most sort of iconic presentation of this virus. It doesn't have to be that way. There can be a lot of variability in the presentation. But when doctors in New York and other places have talked to patients about what it felt like, people with confirmed cases, that's a very common constellation of symptoms. So you can imagine a scenario in 2 or 3 months where we're monitoring the community. If you have the onset of those symptoms, you're immediately quarantined. You're tested with a rapid test that takes just hours, not days. And if you test positive, you go into full quarantine. And if you test negative, you've got something else. They send you home or to the hospital if you're sick for some other reason. If you can test who's had the virus and has had sort of an immune response, they can probably live in the world without restriction. And then there may be a special category of people who are immune to the virus but seem to be carriers. And there are some documented cases of reinfection. There are some documented cases of asymptomatic people having the presence of the virus. And we don't know if they've just had a delayed immune response and they're new cases, or the virus is able to reproduce despite the presence of an immune response in certain people. But the next 2 or 3 months, Chris, will sort all that out. And, you know, really by July 1st, there should be a massive infrastructure in place in every community for how to handle these sorts of decisions. And so that doesn't mean we'll all be back to work and I'll be traveling and all on vacation, but we'll have processes in place that will allow a loosening of sort of the lockdown.
Good to know. So answer this, if you've had it, the odds of you getting it again are minimal?
I'd say if you've been infected with the virus and you have a normal immune system and you've had a healthy response to it in terms of your body making antibodies, which are little proteins that stick to virus particles and help the body defeat them, you're not going to get this virus again in any meaningful way. And then the question is it like influenza? So every year influenza shifts a little bit.
Right.
It has a series of proteins on its coat which sort of rotate, and it's a spot in the viral genome that's really easy to have it mutate. And you know, what happens there is that the flu virus changes every year. We make a vaccine every year. We sometimes miss and we don't catch the right strain of the flu because multiple strains will begin to emerge early in the flu season, and which one becomes predominant is really a guess. So, you know, we're not going to have a vaccine before next winter, but what we will more likely have is some medications that actually help, you know, with people who do get infected.
All right. So with regard to small business owners, people in real estate, or even other restaurants and things, by July, we should have some infrastructure in place to manage this better. Will we be able to test all 300 million people? Is that the goal?
I think we have to.
Is that possible?
I think we have to be able to test. I don't know that you're going to line up every person in the country and test them. I think we have to develop, you know, drive-through testing and testing centers where if people have any symptoms, they can get tested. If somebody has any symptoms, everybody that they've come into contact with can get tested. I think we're going to be doing millions and millions of tests. That's the key to reopening the economy, I think.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Well, yeah, and go back to the flu virus analogy. So every year the flu virus changes a lot. I don't think the coronavirus has a reputation of having these annual shifts in sort of its sort of coat proteins and so on and so forth. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think that, you know, once we have a vaccine for this, that'll be a good thing. There will be, you know, maybe we could call them microwaves of infection that go through the community and people who haven't had it. But if we have the testing in place, it'll be a lot easier to contain those.
Good. Well, it's been an interesting discussion. I appreciate you taking the time. My decision process is going to be interesting. I'm going to use this data to try to figure out what I'm going to do long and short term. My gut feeling is I'm going to continue to build homes, probably going to slow down showings and recommend listings be delayed a little while. We're on like a 5 to 9 week cycle here to figure out what's going on. In Monroe County, it's really just started ramping up. There's been some, I think we had 14 cases last time I checked, and that's, I'm sure, going to increase exponentially, not linearly. So we'll just see how that goes. But since construction is 8 months out, 9 months out for new construction, my hope is that you're accurate in that by next winter, we have a lot more infrastructure in place, and that we'll be able to handle this a lot better and have a lot more testing in place. So,
yeah, I think it's an opportunity for a series of thought experiments that can in part be driven by psychology and economics, which are not, I know a lot about psychology, but not about group psychology. I think that, what is going to be the reaction of, people to coming out of quarantine, to coming out of not working, to having a more remote workspace, and things like that. I think that there are going to be opportunities for folks that can figure out, where those spaces are. Just as an example, how creative and crafty can a listing agent get with virtual tours? I could envision the listing agent going into the house themselves with a camera and their phone and doing a live walkthrough while the buyer is sitting at home in front of their computer.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't even need to physically be there. Maybe you have an army of assistants that do that for you. I mean, who can have the most live virtual showings? Things like that. I don't know. I mean, whoever gets the most creative is going to have a psychological and an economic advantage when things start to thaw.
Very true. Very true. All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts today. Any last words?
No, but follow the rules, be well, be safe. As you know, Chris, we have our own mother who is at risk and 76-year-old on complete lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
Contact. We don't even let her play with squirrels.
No squirrels in the attic.
She would normally play with squirrels, but
Mm-hmm.
she's on complete lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets food delivered to the garage with Sandy wipes, and so
Yep.
it's really what you need to do with people that are at risk. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I'll talk to you later.
Yep, good stuff.
Yep. Bye.
Well.